Says hello, this is Buttons Padin for Storm Trysail Club, and I'm going to be here talking with Butch Ulmer about the Block Island race. Hello, Butch, how are you? Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure, Buttons.
Inaugurated in 1946, Storm Trysail Club's annual Block Island race is one of Long Island Sound's oldest distance races. Although the race has started and finished at different spots throughout the history, we'll talk about that in a second, it has always retained the challenge of getting out of the Sound, rounding Block Island and getting back into the Sound. Butch, your comment was the race is quicker than it used to be. What do you mean by that?
Well, the race has changed two ways, Buttons. First, it's a shorter race than it used to be. For many years, it was started and finished at Larchmont, off Larchmont Harbor. And probably, I would say 10 or 15 years ago, the start and finish were moved to the east to Stamford, which shortened the distance of the race by 20 to 25 miles, somewhere in that stretch. The second reason that the race is quicker is the fact that the boats are faster. A 40-foot boat from 40 or 45 years ago was doing fine if it did 6 knots. And in today's world, 40-foot boats, 8 knots is a piece of cake for them to achieve. So the boats eat up the distance a lot faster than the older boats. Now the sailors pay a little bit for that in the form of comfort, but the fact is the boats just get around the course faster.
From Stamford, where the race starts, the Long Island Sound gets wider and wider, north to south, that is, to a point where off of New Haven, what is it, about 17 miles wide. What are the keys tactically after the start?
Well, the first thing you're going to want to be up to speed on is what the anticipated wind direction is going to be. Long Island Sound, where the shores, particularly off New Haven, are 17 miles apart, very often the wind, if it's a southerly breeze, it's concentrated on the south shore or the south shore of the Sound, the north shore of Long Island, and the northerly breeze, the breeze tends to hang on to Connecticut and the northern shore. So you want to decide, first of all, where geographically you want to position yourself in Long Island Sound. And typically that means which shore are you going to favor? Then,
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go. Well, so then once I'm down the Sound on my way east, what do I have to start thinking about where I'm going to exit the Sound?
Correct. That's the next. I mean, the thing that distinguishes the Block Island race from most other distance races in the Sound is the fact that you have to cope with the entrances at the eastern end or the exits and the entrances at the east end of the Sound, where the current is a very significant factor, where 3 or 4 knots of current is typically common, and thus in light air can be a great boon to your boat speed, or it can be a great albatross around your neck.
Well, and you're going out either through Plum Gut or the race. Why would I choose one versus the other?
Well, and the Plum Gut of the race, there are actually a couple other places you might consider. Those are the typical places, but what is it? Fisher's Island Sound and actually to the south of Race Rock is an area called the Sluiceway, which is there's not a heck of a lot of water there, but you can sail through there and on occasion, and to your advantage, because there'll be less current because the water's shallower. But let's go back to the two main entrances, exits. If you anticipate getting to the eastern end of the sound and at a time when the current is going to be foul, meaning it's flooding, you typically want to get over to the aim for Plum Gut, because there are more places to hide and get out of the current. Secondly, if you have to anchor, which is not uncommon, if the air is light, the water is shallow enough for you to do that. So typically, foul current, you're heading for the gut. Fair current, you're heading for the race.
So once you're outside of Long Island Sound into the eastern part, I guess that's Block Island Sound there on your way to around Block Island. What are some of the things that I could be encountering?
Well, current, of course, is a major factor in Block Island Sound, because all the water that is coming into the sound or going out of the sound at that end of at the eastern end is dumping into Block Island Sound. And so you have a lot of current to contend with there. The water is deeper, and so anchoring becomes a little bit more of a problem. But and of course, there's one other thing that historically is worth just mentioning, and that is you used to be able to go around Block Island in either direction. That was left up to the skipper. They no longer do that anymore because of some very close encounters on the eastern side of the island in the fog. But
an important safety tip, right?
yes, but the other thing that changes significantly in Block Island Sound, and it's called Block Island Sound, but it's really the Atlantic Ocean, is that you get sea conditions, you get a groundswell that can be very significant. Once again, if the air is light, it makes it very difficult sometimes to sail the boats. And it tends to create some problems with some of the crew when the motion of the ocean takes over, and it's substantially different than Long Island Sound. There are more than a few people at the leeward rail, and they're not hiking.
Yeah, I think we've all been there at one time or another.
Yes.
What about visibility out there?
Well, visibility is awful. A lot of the time, because of what has been nicknamed Block Island Sunshine, which is a very, very thick fog that you typically encounter in Block Island Sound, because in the spring of the year, the water is still very cold. And if you get any kind of a southerly breeze where the wind, where the air has a lot of humidity in it, you get fog, and you get very thick fog. Now that's less of an issue today because of the electronic aids to navigation available. But in the days before GPS, the navigator in the Block Island race would very often have to earn his keep to get you to Block Island and then around it.
Your friend Joe Fontanella has some great stories about the Block Island race on
Yes.
the old
Yes.
12-meter Nyala, navigating that. Well, let's say I'm now out to Block Island. The wind's pretty stable out there, shall we say?
Oh, they're anything but. An interesting thing about Block Island itself is that the topography of Block Island is somewhat like an airplane wing in that it's very thick, high at the south end of the island, and it quickly tapers down to the water's edge in Great Salt Pond. And what happens is that, once again, this is particularly the case in a southerly breeze, it hits the bluffs, which are vertical and they go up, I don't know, probably 125, 150 feet. Anyway, it lifts the breeze right up, so that if you get close to the island on the windward side in the southerly, you can find yourself in what might be called a vacuum, where the wind just disappears. And then when you get around to the leeward side of the island, where the topography makes the wind accelerate, it can blow like hell. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of spinnakers have started at one end of Block Island and not made it to the other end, if you get my drift.
All right, so I'm around Block. I'm now heading back, and I've got to go through the Block Island Sound again, where I might see some fog and I might get a lot of groundswell. And then we get back into the sound, choosing either, again, the gut or the race to get in. What is it, about 50 miles left on there? What happens next?
Well, once again, you're going to be betting on where you think the wind is going to be best, and there can be a very significant difference once again, it's a springtime in light air and in clear weather. The land mass of Rhode Island shore, Connecticut, can heat up very quickly from the sunlight, because there's a lot of sunlight at this time of year, and you can get a thermal breeze right on the North Shore that will and if there's any kind of a gradient wind at all, or if there's no gradient wind, that will very often get you a good part of the way home. If there's a southerly breeze, the 9 out of 10 times you want to stick to the Long Island shore, because the breeze, a southerly breeze, typically in Long Island Sound, is stronger on the Long Island shore. Current, as you move west in the Sound, current becomes less and less of a factor. It doesn't disappear, but it becomes less and less of a factor. And where the wind is more and more of a factor.
So then you hook around into Stanford Harbor, you finish, and Bob's your uncle.
Yes.
Hey, Butch, thanks for sharing these insights. The Block Island race, as I said, the organizing authority is the Storm Trysail Club. This is the 78th running of the event. It starts Friday. This Friday, May 23rd at noon is the first start, with PHRF and ORC being offered, as well as fully crewed and double-handed. You'll be able to track the Block Island race on the YB tracker, thanks to our sponsors, Ray Marine and Sebago. And we'll also thank our other sponsors. We also have to thank Litchfield Distillery, IHG Hotels and Resorts, McMichael Yacht Yards and Brokers, UK Sailmakers Northeast, and Regatta for being sponsors. That's Regatta Mixers for all of our dark and stormies. Butch, thanks. We'll be out there watching the race this weekend, and thanks for your help.
My pleasure. Have a nice day and a good race.